Our first guests are from Arizona Department of Environmental Quality, and they have so much information. You might have seen them at the expo. Today you get to see everything that they have to show us with a special emphasis on Superfund sites. And although we know there's Superfund sites, very few of us even know what those are or how to locate them. So if you're a listing agent, this is really important for your sellers to know. If you're a buyer's agent, super important for your buyers to know. If you're in commercial, you probably are more familiar than the residential, but the residential agents, you need to know it too, because sometimes plumes are there that go into a neighborhood, and your seller and buyers need to know that. If you look over here on this handout table, they have brought handouts that refer back to the slides and the navigations that we'll be doing today. So those are great reference pieces for you to take with you today. Make sure you...
Like Liz said, we are here to discuss a variety of items, but specifically Superfund and WRF and how it relates to you and what you all do, but just our agency as a whole, because that also relates to you, because it's where you live. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so this is the agency overview. This is who we are as an agency. This is our mission, some of the efficiencies and innovations that we've done over the years, as well as a lot of awards that we have gotten for all the work that we have done for you, our citizens of Arizona. We were established in 1987 as a cabinet-level environmental agency. We actually have offices in Phoenix and Tucson, and we have what are called community liaisons in the rural areas throughout the entire state, like northern, southern, and like western. We are composed of 3 programs. We have an air quality program, we have a waste program, and then we have water quality, with functional units responsible for technical operation and policy support. Also, ADEQ carries out several core functions. Oops, sorry, didn't mean to do that. ADEQ carries out several core functions. We have a variety of things leading from planning and permitting, compliance management, monitoring, assessment, cleanups, and then outreach, which is what Teresa and I are here today, is the outreach component of what ADEQ does. So today, ADEQ, oh, I keep doing the wrong thing. So today, basically, ADEQ is protecting human health and the environment better than ever before. We have achieved breakthroughs in citizen engagement, cost efficiency, and most importantly, our mission outcomes. We have won 23, and you can see it up there, 23 separate state and national awards for our leadership, innovation, and citizen engagement. Now I can do that one. Okay. So this is some of the results. This is some of what we have done. This is the environmental results we have achieved. In 2015, only 75% of Arizonans were drinking healthy water, if you can believe that. Thanks in part to funding initiatives supported by the legislature, now more than 99% of Arizonans are being provided with healthy drinking water today. In other words, today, 1.4 million more people are better served healthy drinking water. Now, ADEQ also is using proactive, predictive tools to help drinking water systems address issues before they cause any kind of environmental issue or they have any sort of exceedance of a standard. So this is some of the tools that we use. That's where the monitoring and the assessing comes in. Now, WRF, which is an acronym, I'm sure you all have yours too. It stands for Water Quality Assurance Revolving Fund. That program has treated, and that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today, over 12 billion gallons of contaminated groundwater since 2015. And we all know in Arizona, especially right now, water is a precious resource, so we need to make sure that it's available and it's clean. Arizona's air quality has actually improved, believe it or not, over the past 20 years, despite the population doubling and our economy growing. Let's see, I want to make sure I do the right thing here. There we go. Okay, so I'll just let you take a look at those real quick. All right. Now, this is just giving you some trends and data of how we're helping get everybody back into compliance and getting tanks cleaned up from all of our gas stations and the percentage of people with healthy drinking water. This is a highlight of many of our other environmental results and process improvements. That website that's on there is our AMS, which is the Arizona Management System website. You can see a lot more examples of how ADEQ and our dedication to continuous improvement is helping us achieve better environmental results for all of you. So here's Liz talked a little bit about what you can find online and a lot of the data and information. We launched what's called a My Community webpage, and on that is a demographic and environmental data dashboard. And you can search by county for a variety of things. So in addition to sharing the results, here are some online resources. Making sure that all Arizonans, regardless of where they live, can easily access information about the environment in which they live, work, and play. Like I mentioned a little bit earlier, the webpage is called the My Community webpage, where the people of Arizona can get up-to-date information about every environmental issue in the community, no matter where they live. This is updated as something is entered into our database. This dashboard is updated. It's alive. It's not a once a year. It's as it happens. It is updated, so it's in real time. We list all of our permits, and we sort them by business type so that it's easy to determine what ADEQ permits you may need. And if they're not ADEQ permits, but they may relate to you, we do have a resource page, which you can see over there on the left. We also offer detailed quality forecasts for cities. How many of you have seen and heard about the ozone alerts? Does anybody get those? Okay, a few of you, good. A few of you, yay, it's working. We also offer the detailed air quality forecast for cities and towns throughout the state. Today, all areas within air quality concerns receive daily and hourly forecasts to help make sure that the people of Arizona can make wise decisions about their health. So if you're in an area that we do have some air quality concerns, you would get, like I mentioned, you would get active daily alerts so you can make the decision on how to do your activities. Some of those areas include Douglas, Flagstaff, Miami, Nogales, Phoenix, Prescott, Rito, Tucson, and Yuma. Okay, so are there any questions on any of the overall agency stuff that I've presented so far? Because if not, we'll move on to the nitty-gritty of our presentation, which is Superfund and WRF.
If you have questions, we have microphones in the center of the room, one here and one here. So please move to a microphone so that we can all hear your question as well.
Yeah. And if you don't have one now, that's fine. You can ask questions. We'll stop a couple more times as we go through things. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Teresa.
And I just want to point out about the air quality. If you follow us on social media, a lot of times those are posted on social media. So if you want to kind of not get an alert to your phone, but you want to know, you can go on to social media and like ADEQ, and you'll get those little alerts. We are going to talk specifically about the disclosure statement that you all have probably seen on your forms about saying Superfund, WRF, or CERCLA site. And you're like, I guess not, right? I don't know what those things are. So we're going to explain to you what they are, what the differences between them are. And we're going to talk about a few other environmental things. And then we will give you some contact information for ADEQ contacts for various assorted environmental concerns. So you'll have those numbers available to you. And then we are going to teach you how to use our online maps so that you can actually type in an address and be able to see whether or not your site is near anything that might be of an environmental concern. We're going to focus on the Superfund and WRF sites, but we'll show you how you can change layers and look at other things.
So before we move on, I want to make sure we have 2 handouts, and one of them is a step-by-step tutorial that you can take home with you and kind of navigate the website at your leisure. And then the other one is obviously our slides and stuff too. So I just wanted to make sure.
Okay, so you have under administrative code the need and you have to disclose. You have to disclose anything about the property that might adversely affect it. So one of those things that you're going to see on your disclosure form is going to be the one about the Superfund and wharf sites. So it's under your obligation under law to be able to disclose those and do it accurately. So we're going to show you how you can accurately find out whether your site is indeed one that you need to disclose that about.
Yeah, and it's really important that you have that information, because you can, if it's not done correctly, or you're aware, or your buyers are aware, sellers are aware, and they don't disclose, you can be taken to court. So it's really important, and I'm really thankful that Liz invited us here today to make sure that you all have the correct information and you know where to go, and you have it from the right authentic source as well. So, all right.
Okay, so here is your disclosure form.
Does this look familiar? Yes? Right? Everybody knows it, right? Just checking.
Okay, so we're going to concentrate right there on lines 219 and 220, where it says, are you aware if the property is located within or subject to any of the following ordinances? And that very first little box says Superfund Wharf CERCLA. And you're like, well, I guess not. No one told me it was, so how do I really find out if that's indeed the case? So we're going to show you how you can actually make sure that if you need to click that box or not, and what that means.
Something to keep in mind with our Superfund sites or our wharf sites, and we're going to go into kind of the difference a little bit later, is that sites in the Metro Phoenix area, and same with Tucson as well, they are connected to a city or some kind of municipal water system. So as long as your property or whoever you're dealing with has that, then that route of exposure has been eliminated in one sense. And also they are required by state and federal rules to test that water in order to serve it to you. So what we're dealing with about 90% of our sites here in Arizona is a groundwater issue. It's something you and I will probably never see in our daily lives, but it's there. And so it's important to let you and your customers know what is going on, because they may hear about it or know about it. But it's more of a groundwater issue, but being connected to some kind of municipal water source alleviates that exposure pathway. Our groundwater in this area can be anywhere from 30 feet to 1,000 feet down. So like I said, we would never be in contact with it in our daily lives. The other thing too, don't go to Google and try to Google Superfund. I know, what? But Google knows everything. And I say that really from experience. I had somebody call me a couple years ago who her agent Googled Superfund in Arizona, got wrong information, and almost completely stopped the sale. Yeah. So they called us to verify it, trust but verify, right? I went through everything, showed this buyer the correct website, explained exactly what was going on, completely relieved, and the sale went through. So that's why it's really important that you have the right information, and that's why we're here today.
Okay, so first of all, we've got to explain to you what is Superfund. So Superfund was the result of a law that was passed in the 80s that you often hear referred to as CERCLA, and it stands for the Comprehensive Environmental Response, Compensation, and Liability Act. So why in the world is it called Superfund? So this act set up a fund from fees on like gasoline and other manufacturers that went into a little pot that when there was a toxic waste site, there was money available to clean it up if you couldn't figure out who caused it to start with, or the company that started it is no longer in existence. So Superfund sites exist across the country. Every state has various Superfund sites. Superfund is then uses the money to clean up those sites. And cleaning them up can mean it's water, can mean it's soil, it can mean a variety of different things. But it made this fund available so that we didn't have to go out and find responsible parties if there were none. So if there's no one available to clean it up, this was then amended in 1986 with SARA, which is the Superfund Reauthorization Act or something like that.
Yeah.
And SARA, what SARA did was it put the government has to include the public when making decisions about Superfund sites. So it included things like we work with citizens advisory boards at different Superfund sites, which are citizens like you guys who just have an interest in that site. They want to make sure it's cleaned up so that the neighborhood is protected, the environment is protected. So one of the things that we're doing here is fulfilling the obligations we have under SARA to inform the public about what Superfund is, where it exists, how you can find Superfund sites. And if you look at the bottom, you'll see that we've got some links for you there. If you want to learn more about Superfund, the first link is on our website, and it's just kind of a little blurb about what Superfund is. And then the other two are the EPA. So Superfund sites are regulated by the Environmental Protection Agency, and they are regulated at a federal level. So we've got the link for EPA's Superfund site, and then we are in Region 9 of the EPA, and those are the people that would be involved directly with cleaning up Superfund sites here in Arizona.
So the list of all of the sites are called, it's called NPL, like it says on the sites, the National Priorities List. So that's a listed Superfund site. So that's where you would look to see any sites in Arizona on the NPL. And so you can go through those web pages to figure that out. And like you said, it could be anything from mining, processing plants, or even former government for facilities. But I know there's been some questions, or there's been an ask to explain a little bit about, well, what about the property owners? Are they liable for that if they buy a property? What does the federal government say? So EPA, and we'll go into what Arizona law says as well, but in general, let's do the federal side first, because that's kind of where we based ours off of, is the policy states that an owner of a residential property located on a Superfund site is protected from being required to pay for the cleanup if the owner has not engaged in the activity, added to the activity, or exasperates it in any way, or did anything that led to it. So if they're not responsible in any way, shape, or form, they will not be responsible to clean it up. That's why we have the Superfund, and that's why we have our war fund. We will handle that, and we do try to go after those responsible. So
if they're still around.
Yeah, if they're still around, and that's half our battle.
Most of these sites, if you can imagine, were, this happened in the 50s, 60s, 70s. People didn't really think about the environment. So a lot of those companies are not around anymore, and that's really what necessitated the need for the Superfund. Because how can you get someone to pay for something when they're not here anymore?
It also helps us go in and assess and clean up a lot quicker than waiting around to find out, well, who's going to pay for it? No, that's what's important is human health and the environment. So we use the fund to do like the upfront work and then hopefully get paid back later. We do have a few responsible parties that step up and, hey, they self-report it and they pay for it, and we monitor them and make sure that they're doing it right. But your residential property owners, they are not liable. And the only thing really that we ask, and the same with some of the commercial, and we'll go into that a little bit later, is that we may need to get on site. We may need to sample. We may need to do something. So just cooperate with us, and we'll continue to get everything cleaned up for you. Yeah. All right. And like I said, we will discuss the Arizona aspect of that a little bit later. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit now, too. I'm going to stay back here just to reference my notes in case I don't forget anything important. So this is one of the West Valley sites. Does this look familiar? Does anybody know about this site? Yep, a couple of you? Awesome. So this is a Superfund site, which is a federal site, which is why we have it up here to share with you. This border is, there's two distinct plumes. There's a northern and a southern, so it's the Phoenix Goodyear Airport, north and south. And it's named that because that's the people that caused it. And I would like to note that they are also the people cleaning it up and paying for all of the cleanup. So this is an example of a very responsible party who has stepped up and has funded and is cleaning and funding all of the cleanup. It was Unidynamics and then the Phoenix Goodyear Airport, which I think now is Goodyear Tire and Rubber. So they partner with EPA and the state and are actively cleaning up the site. And this is all groundwater. What was surface water is contained on site or has all, not surface water. What is surface, which is soil, has either been cleaned up or is contained on site and has restricted access, so you wouldn't be exposed to it. This is the website if you want to get more information about the Phoenix Goodyear site, but we wanted to give you an example of a West Valley site. Okay, so what is WRF? So Teresa talked a lot about Superfund and the federal government. Now I'm going to talk a little bit more specifically about the state. So WRF, for Star Trek fans, it's not the character. This actually has an actual meaning. It's the Water Quality Assurance Revolving Fund. And it pretty much is what it says. It's a fund that was set aside to assure we have good water quality. And it's revolving, meaning we get money every single year. How much varies from a legislature. But we clean up the soil, the groundwater, and the surface water contamination. So you'll hear it referred to interchangeably as state Superfund or Superfund, but it is all under that Superfund umbrella. Same with the federal sides. What we're really dealing with here is more of a groundwater issue, and any soil contamination has either been cleaned up already or has been capped or is restricted. And we do put covenants on land and deed restrictions if needed. So we're going to go into Superfund site, WRF sites, where to find them, how to find them, and what all of that means. Is there anything else that I forgot?
So just like with Superfund, the state says that if you are a homeowner, you are not liable for cleaning up as long as you did not cause any of the issue. So if you own the property and it does turn out to be a WRF site, just like with Superfund, you're not going to be liable for it. The state will probably, like Wendy had pointed out, need access to test the soil and test the water and that type of thing. But they will not charge you for, and they've had sites where they've, put in well monitoring systems or put in systems that clean people's well water if that's an issue, because they are not liable for anything to do with cleaning up that site.
So we have some of the rural areas that have private wells, and they're in Superfund sites. So the state has gone in early, and it's called an early response action, and have installed water treatment systems for them at no cost. Because of the fact that they didn't cause it, they just happen to live here, kind of thing. So that's part of what that fund pays for, is to help protect them and help us get in there and take that action. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So here is what we're talking about. So most of the times we're talking about groundwater that is contaminated. So if you notice, here is an example of where you would find groundwater. So you're going to have your surface, you're going to have your soil, you're going to have some sort of other sandy stuff, and then the groundwater is also often referred to as an aquifer, okay? And that water here, as Wendy mentioned, can be a few feet down to way, way down, okay? So it really depends on where you are located, how far down that water is going to be. That water, the only way you would have any contact with it is if you dug a well, and there is a well, and that would bring that water up to the surface. But as long as that water is down there, hundreds of feet down, you're not going to have any touching of that contaminated water. It is important to clean that water, of course, though, and we do that through various means, but you would not necessarily have any contact with it. Here, especially in the metro area, we're all drinking water from the municipal water supply. So we're having no contact with this water. And if there is any way that a municipal well that would provide us drinking water would be impacted, then we would address that issue and not have that get into your water supply.
Yeah, we have a very good open relationship with all of the cities, other municipalities, and all the water companies. So it's very aware of wells are in the areas that are either not used, they've been abandoned, or they're treated. The other thing is that ADEQ and EPA have set limits for how much contamination can be found in groundwater and drinking water, and so we always try to clean up to a certain standard. You probably heard the term standards, cleaning up to standards. What is the standard? That's what we aim for, to get below that for any kind of cleanup that we may do, whether it's soil or groundwater. And how does this groundwater become contaminated? We mentioned it a little bit earlier, a variety of ways, but a lot of times it's leaks or spills either from the surface or near the surface, and then it just trickles down. Imagine, I mean, we all have water on the ground and then it goes away somewhere. Well, that's sometimes when the contamination happens, it just goes away. And back in the 40s and 50s, well, it went away. I'll just dig a hole and don't have to worry about it. Well, now we get to worry about it. So that's a lot of this is cleaning up bad historical practices because we didn't know. Really, that's a lot of it. And those that did know have stepped up and are doing something about it.
A lot of like old dry cleaners, old gas stations, manufacturing facilities. Those are the types of properties where back in the day people didn't really. I used to work with a guy who worked actually on one of the Superfund sites back before it was a Superfund site. And their thing was dilution is the solution to pollution. And so they would literally, this was at Oak Ridge, Tennessee, they would literally pour stuff in the drain and flush it with water. Well, where's the water go? It goes into the soil, right, eventually. And so now they have got a big old Superfund site because for 50 years people just flushed it down with water. And it was just people didn't know any better, and it wasn't thought that these things were necessarily going to last that long in the environment or become the problem that they are.
And so the extent of where we think that contamination is, because we can't open up the ground and say, oh, it's right there, so that's what we do drilling and monitoring, that's called a plume. So when you hear the word plume, it's the estimated extent of that contamination. And go ahead. Like Teresa said, about 90% of our sites are all dry cleaners because PCE and TCE, which is tetrachloroethylene and trichloroethylene, that's the big word, but we'll just call it TCE and PCE. It's a really good degreaser and cleaner. So manufacturing of parts or anything metal, dry cleaners, they use that chemical to clean your clothes. And so a lot of our sites are all dry cleaners, again, back in the day. They have since moved away from some of those, and they use other means, but those are the main two contaminants that we are dealing with, and that's where they mostly came from. So this is a site over on the west side. This is actually Teresa's site that she works on, so you want to take it over here?
Okay, so this is at 51st and Camelback,
Yeah.
and you can see that, so one thing about groundwater is it doesn't stay still, it moves. And the plume that you see is going to be based on where the groundwater moved. So there could be, a site at one end where there was actually the contamination, but then it got in the groundwater, and the groundwater, just like a river, moves. And so it spreads out underneath into the aquifer in that plume. So this site is...
Okay, so this site is bounded to the north by West Bethany Home, to the south by Indian School Road, to the east by 43rd, and then to the west by 59th Avenue. And this is a classic site that we're dealing with, that TCE and PCE that I had mentioned. And then those chemicals, those products break down. So we have those as well. And we're trying to, right now at this site, we're trying to assess what we have and what we're dealing with.
And it was dry cleaning and manufacturing facilities that caused this groundwater contamination.
Yep. Okay. So, but before we go on to Department of Defense, questions. Make sure to go use the mic. Let's make Liz happy, right, and follow her directions.
Yes, I was just wondering, have they ever determined what that particular area, I don't know if you guys remember, but decades ago, was a cancer cluster?
Oh, the Maryville Cancer Cluster?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Was it ever determined that this groundwater had anything to do with it?
I think there was some aspect of the groundwater that was related to it, which is why now that site has active cleanup there, and none of the wells in that area, they were abandoned years and years and years ago. The Arizona Department of Health Services would be better able to answer that question as to the exact routes and exposures, but I do believe that groundwater was one of them.
Yeah, the Department of Health did a risk assessment, which is a means of kind of looking at how people are exposed, what they're exposed to, how long, and what the health effects might be. So.
Yeah.
Where are they getting their groundwater from now?
It's all municipal. It's all
Yeah.
from the city of Phoenix. City of Phoenix does not have any wells in that area. They haven't had wells in that area for a really, really long time. And like I mentioned earlier, they have state and federal guidelines that they have to serve, that they have to follow, that they have to do in order to even get that water out to you. So and the city of Phoenix and the city of Tucson has met or exceeded those standards, and every year they do what's called a consumer confidence report, and they basically share all of their data and all of the research with all of you. You just got to go go ask for it.
Yeah.
Piggyback on her question, and that is, while the contaminants may be in the water, do they ever become airborne? I don't know, I guess I probably would doubt the data on the cancer cluster on that one too.
Yeah. So in regards to that cancer cluster, that was, I think, back in the 70s or 80s. But what we know about it now, PCE and TCE are volatile organic compounds. So they want to volatilize. They do want to go in the air. They want to be in a gaseous form. So they do want to get out. And so there is some, so they do want to be a gas, but because what we're dealing with is so far below ground that it breaks down as it becomes a gas as one. So it's called vapor intrusion. You may have heard of it if you've been kind of following some of that. That is something that we look at to see, are any of these contaminants in their gaseous form getting into homes or buildings, and the vapors are intruding into it. So that is one of the avenues when we do these Superfund sites and the investigations. That is something that we look at. Above the groundwater, above the soil, where are the gases, where are they going? And now gases move all over the place. But we don't have a big issue with vapor intrusion here because our groundwater is so far down. Back east, it's a much bigger deal because you just basically dig a hole in the backyard and you have water, you know? But here, vapor intrusion, that is a very valid concern, and we do look at that, and we do health assessments and health risks, but it's not as much as a concern here because of the level of the groundwater. But they do want to volatilize. They do want to go out and go in the air, and then they'll break down, and then they become non-existent.
So if they think that's going to be an issue, they can do air monitoring.
Absolutely.
So they can set up some monitoring stations like in a building if they think that's going to be an issue. And if the soil is contaminated, a lot of times what they'll do is remove the soil.
Yeah.
So they'll just come in, bulldoze it up, take it away, and have it disposed of. They usually bury it really, really far down. So if that's an issue where they think that, it's going to be in the soil and people would be exposed that way, they can actually remove the soil.
Yeah, and we have very few sites that's a concern. But if you are in a Superfund site, if that is one of the concerns you have, it would be on the website, or that's why you would call Teresa and I to get the right information.
Yes.
We have two more questions, and then we'll move on.
Yeah.
At this point, it's probably a good idea to note that if you're showing homes in any of these Superfund sites, that you don't try to answer questions and give assurances that there's no contamination or there's not going to be any effect if they choose to buy a home. But to call ADEQ and have them get into a conversation with you folks.
Correct. And
Your brokers will appreciate that.
yeah, and exactly. I can't tell you how many phone calls I've had with people for that exact reason. So he is right. Get the source, get the information from the right source, as well as our website is kept live and active daily if needed, and that's where a lot of your information also can go to your buyers and sellers too. So yes, the biggest conversation I have a lot is with your lenders, because when they see Superfund, a lot of them who don't live here kind of freak out. So definitely let us help you with those conversations.
Yeah.
You had a question?
Yes. What does the contaminated soil?
Microphone.
I'm loud
Well, I know, but there's people, but they're recording this. I can hear you, but I know the people on the recording may not.
You mentioned earlier that, you remove the contaminated soil. Where do you take it to? Now you
It
contaminate
really
a new
depends on
area.
what it's contaminated with.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, it would depend. Sometimes you can take off the top layer, put soil down, that's what they did at like Vulture Mill in Wickenburg. They removed kind of the top of the soil, put new soil down, and then put, a layer of grass and vegetation on top. Sometimes if it's, something really, really bad, it has to be shipped off somewhere and,
Yeah, there are registered hazardous waste disposal sites and landfills that can take a certain kind or a certain amount. So it is disposed of properly. Sometimes you can clean up the soil enough that you can leave the soil in place, or you just cap it so that nobody has exposure to it.
Yeah.
But if it is removed off-site, it is taken to a accredited, established facility to either deal
yeah.
to
It
deal
would
with the
depend on
cleanup.
what's in it and where it goes.
Correct.
So.
Yeah.
What about the gas station cleanup?
Gas station. So I don't know a lot about gas station cleanups because we're here specifically for Superfund and Wharf, but they follow some of the same with the same kind of cleanup methods. If there's contaminated soil, they'll deal with it in some of the same ways. But we have phone numbers at the end of people in our underground storage tanks group that if you have specific questions on that they can answer that better for you.
Great, thank you.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so
Okay.
where's this yours?
Yeah, mine.
Okay,
So one of the other kinds of sites that you could possibly have to deal with are what are called FUDs. So FUDs are formerly used defense sites. They could be places where they had like a range where they practiced target shooting, or they could be, sites where they made chemical weapons. So there can be a variety of different things that lead to this. These are also handled by the federal government. Depending on the site, it might be the EPA or the Army Corps of Engineers that's in charge of cleaning up a formerly used defense sites. There's several of them kind of spattered around the state. A lot of them were places where they practiced like shooting ranges and things like that. So there can be even things like unexploded munitions or stuff like that there. So
yeah, because with all the different wars, we had to train the military training. So it was either bombing, it was shooting air, skeet ranges, all sorts of stuff. And Arizona, believe it or not, there was a lot of that going on here.
well,
we were a big training range.
Yeah, for World War II for desert.
Yeah.
Fighting in the desert. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of ranges that have been left. There's reports of people finding unexploded stuff. And so we have those listed on our website as well. And then I think all of the ones here in Arizona, the Corps of Engineers is in charge of. And so their link to their site is right there. So if you have questions, we do list these on our website. So if you're concerned about it, you can look that up.
So 3 of them, or a few that some of you may know here on the Luke Air Force Base is an old Superfund circular site, and then the Air National Guard by the airport is a DOD site. Berry Goldwater Range out by Yuma is a FUD site. There's one out by Kingman, it's a FUD site. So they're kind of spread around, but the Department of Defense is responsible for managing those and taking care of those, and they're now coming back and cleaning it up. Let's see, any other questions on that? Okay, because they pretty much follow the same.
Yeah, they follow the
process.
same procedures as you would with a Superfund site.
And then us as a state, we make
have a
sure.
question.
Okay, hold on one second. So we make sure that the state's laws, rules, and interests are taken into account. So we partner very well with the DOD and the Corps and stuff. Question?
Yes. In Kingman, around that area, there was they were testing, I think, atom bombs. Do you remember that?
Atom
There-
bombs?
Yeah.
Oh,
There is a FUD site near near there, Kingman, but I don't know. I thought it was a munitions range.
Yeah, the Kingman sites are more munitions. I think the bomb you're thinking of is Nevada.
No. This
Oh,
was
okay.
I saw a documentary on it.
Oh, okay.
Because
Oh.
my question would have been, how would they handle something like that as far as the radiation is concerned?
So I used to work at Oak
She
Ridge.
can answer that, yeah. I don't
used to
know.
work at Oak Ridge and at Fernald, Ohio, which no one even realizes they did uranium enrichment in the middle of Ohio, if anybody cares to know. So with those sites, it really depends on the level of radiation. So if you have low-level radioactive waste, it can be disposed of at like Nevada Test Site. If you have higher levels, there are various ways that they're trying to deal with that. So one of the things they've done recently is called vitrification, where they actually turn radioactive waste into like a form of glass so that it takes up less space and they can, store it better. There is actually no place in the United States where we have long-term storage of radioactive waste. So Yucca Mountain was supposed to be the place, and then there was various sort of reasons why they did not end up going through with Yucca Mountain. So high-level radioactive waste is a concern. They usually store it temporarily at the Nevada Test Site. But then it is supposed to be long-term stored, and that is another issue that the federal government needs to deal with because we don't have a long-term radioactive waste disposal place in the U.S.
Yeah, so what we deal with more is groundwater and soil and the Superfund wharf aspects. So that's like a whole nother department.
that-
And luckily, she used to work on one of those sites, so she can answer that question.
Two of them. I get those notices in the mail, like, did you drink the water? And and you're like, I probably did.
So this is a summary, this is a summary of, because we've talked about 3 different kinds of sites, so this is a summary of how they're dispersed in Arizona.
So as you can see, we have quite a few sites in the Maricopa County area. So this is kind of the highest concentration, followed by probably Tucson, as you can probably imagine, major metropolitan areas.
Yeah. So this is a kind of a map. You can find this map on our website. This is basically what the Central Phoenix area looks like in terms of Superfund sites. So like she said, and as you saw, most of them are concentrated in your industrial areas. And so basically what this shows you is you see 2 different colors here. So you see the brown and you see the green. This is how you know what's a state site and what's a federal site. And really what the biggest difference is, whose laws and rules are we following? Are we following state laws and state rules and a state project manager? Or are we following federal rules and a project manager over in San Francisco? Both Superfund and Circular follow the same process of investigation. Then they figure out, and then after they have figured out what they have, how much they're dealing with and where it is, the best way to clean it up, then they then they install a treatment method to clean it up. Then eventually it gets to the standards that they're aiming for, and then the site is closed. That's the 5-second version of our 20-year-long process.
Yeah, it doesn't happen overnight. So when you talk about these sites, you are talking decades sometimes to clean them up. And some, really, really, really bad ones, they have to, do things like different land uses and stuff depending on how well,
But the relationship between EPA and we have a really good relationship with them. So if we are dealing with a Superfund site, like that big one on the right-hand side, I don't know if anybody knows that one. It's in the East Valley. That's North Indian Bend Wash, the nice little greenbelt area. That is actually a Superfund site that's been around for quite a while, and it will not be cleaned up probably in my lifetime. But it is a groundwater issue. That's where the water is about 1,000 feet down. So it's not anything that we're exposed to. But we have a very good relationship with EPA on the federal sites. We make sure, like I mentioned, that the state laws and rules are followed, that our citizens are informed, that like our permits, our lakes, our streams are protected. We have that relationship with them. But when it comes to the state sites, all the brown ones, the federal government is not involved at all. We have sole responsibility and sole control over that site, and that's the way state of Arizona likes it. So we don't want the federal government in here as much as we possibly can. So we have not had any new federal sites, but we have had some new state sites. Let's see, I think that's it. So, okay, so we talked to you about how else we can help you with your disclosures on that form. These are some of the other topics and lines on that form that ADEQ can help get you some of those answers so that you can properly fill that information out. It varies from gas stations, like the gentleman asked earlier, landfills, hazardous waste material facilities, septic tanks. Who's dealt with septic tanks? Anybody? I was hoping so, yeah. So there's laws and rules about septic tank, like you gotta get inspected, and then who pays for that, and how long is that good for, and how do I find a good inspector, and is it 6 months, but what if I don't use it? All those questions can be answered through our on-site wastewater group, as well as keep in mind certain counties have delegation authority for on-site septic, so you may have to go to the county, not the state, but they can help you with that. And so we'll have all that information at the bottom.
And we'll show you how some of these things you can see on our eMaps feature. So we'll show you those too.
Yeah, and so one of the questions, one of the relationships and questions that we were asked to cover as well is other groups. Like, how do we know where to go? Like, what does ADWR do, and what does ADHS? ADWR is Arizona Department of Water Resources. ADEQ. So Arizona Department of Water Resources, they're the ones that anybody who is going to build a subdivision has to go to ADWR and do the 100-year assured water supply. If you have a well, if you're going to drill a well, you have a well, you want to abandon a well, which is dug underground, ADWR handles that. Our groundwater, water conservation, ADWR deals with that kind of aspect. Your drinking water levels, drinking water testing, that is your cities, your municipalities, or your water providers like Scottsdale. Half of their water comes from EPCOR Water Group. It's a private water company. Anthem, I think, is EPCOR Water. They can deal with those kind of questions. ADEQ is about the cleanup of the water, where it is, how to, and then also landfills, hazardous waste facilities, air quality, that kind of stuff. So that's the difference on where do you go if you have certain questions and how those different agencies work. But we all interact and talk to each other. Like if somebody wants to drill a well, they'll contact us to make sure it's not in a Superfund site. Will it exacerbate the Superfund site if we drill a well here? So we do have that relationship as well. And then our website has a lot more information too. All right. And here's those phone numbers we said we'd give you. Ta-da!
So if you do have questions about gas stations and storage tanks, that's the UST program, underground storage tanks. So that's who you would contact for that information.
Yeah. And then while she's, oh, go ahead. She got there quick.
Break the microphone. We're realtors, so we deal with new home subdivisions, that type of thing. What kind of testing is a builder supposed to do when they take over agricultural land?
I honestly do not know that question. That's not something we deal
So
with.
DDT and all that kind of stuff that they used years ago, does that go away?
DDT is what we call a persistent organic pollutant. So it does break down, but it's a really long time. You still find DDT on your potatoes today. Just
Right,
yeah.
right. So all these farms that we've had on the west side and the south of town.
That have turned into homes and stuff?
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't know. That's a question I can't answer. I'm happy to ask around and see who would be the ones to handle that and monitor that, and then get that information to Liz, and then she can send it out to. It may be a group, it may be somebody within ADEQ, but that's not something, unfortunately, that I know, but I'm happy to get that, or at least get a resource for you, so, yeah.
Hi. Sorry if it's a silly question, but in regards of rainwater, what are you doing in aspects of air pollution? Like, kind of, are you testing the quality of the rainwater as it's coming down before it essentially seeps into our soil? And then obviously with the intense heat, evaporates back into a gas. Like, has there been any analysis on that?
So I think our water quality group has some rainwater collection areas and some testing. I know when there's rain events, they go out and do a lot of testing of the storm water and the runoff. But since we're here mainly for Superfund and WRF, that's a follow-up question. I can get you in contact with somebody in like our surface water program to see how rainwater plays and what testing is done. But I know surface water does, that's why it's really important that we keep our surfaces clean and we sweep our porches and because that will all eventually run off into the water. But I know they monitor that. So see me afterwards. I can get the specifics of your question, and that's something else I'll send to Liz after the fact, too.
I have a question that's kind of the elephant in the room. We're being forced to go to electric vehicles. Years ago, when I bought a hybrid, I remember sitting in the finance office and the guy saying, oh, did you know there's a place in New Mexico where they're putting these electric batteries that are leaching into the soil and they don't know what to do with that? So as we convert more and more to electric vehicles, maybe it's not an issue right now for Arizona, but it could be. And what is your thought process on these electric batteries that are eventually going to deteriorate?
Again, that's not a question we can answer because we're Superfund and WARF. But that is definitely, I know that is
There's
a
been a
question
lot of
that
articles.
our solid waste group and our hazardous waste group is dealing with because that's where the landfills, that's the storage facilities. That is an absolute environmental concern that is on the forefront. So I can, our hazardous waste group and solid waste group, they would be best to answer that in terms of Arizona's outlook and point of view and the concerns. So you can feel free to follow up with them, or if you would like, I can get your name and number and follow back. Again, add that to the list of things for Liz. But we deal with the contamination that's already happened, not what's going to happen in the future. But I do know from my meetings that I've been in, that's definitely something that, we got to think about this. So that's true.
Yeah.
Okay. Also, the other thing I want to mention is we do have an online record search. So it's called Mega Search. It's available on our website. And you can go and do record search to see if there's information that you need or want before having to go downtown. You can a lot of times have that sent to you, but that's on our website. Some of the other programs for any of you commercial realtors out there or people who may know of commercial realtors, one of the handouts I gave you, it was the RAC card. We have a program called the Voluntary Remediation Program. And that encourages property owners and other interested parties to invest resources voluntarily to restore contaminated sites as quickly as possible. They follow the same kind of process, but ADEQ is like their consultant, and they come forward and then they go through the process, and then to make sure to return to healthful standards. In return for such willing cooperation, ADEQ forgoes any kind of enforcement activity on that site or to that owner for them doing that work. And we do have a website for that as well, if you know of any commercial realtors or anything like that. So on that RAC card, I don't know if everybody got one, a great example of that, a VRP site that hopefully everybody may know of is the Tempe Marketplace. That used to be, that owner came forth because the city obviously wanted to develop it, worked with VRP, got it cleaned up, and now it's an economic booming area for that city. So there are programs to help get contaminated properties back into economic use. We also have what's called the PPA program. It's called it's a prospective purchaser agreement, and keyword is prospective. Because if you are going in and you have a contaminated property, you can get liability protection from the state saying, I bought this, I knew it had XYZ at this time, I'm not liable for what happened beforehand. If something happens afterwards, they would be. So you would do, I think somebody asked about assessing the soil. You would assess what is there, kind of like your baseline. And then in return for the liability protection, you also have to do some economic benefit and public use. So there are definitely programs out there for contaminated properties to get them back into reuse. And we have all that contact information for you. There is a cost, but the liability protection is worth it. Okay, and then the biggest thing that we're here today too is our e-maps and everything you can find online. But the first thing I want to ask is I want you to pull up your listings, and if we could have an address of somebody who has a listing, we're going to show you how to navigate the website. We're going to pull up that address so you kind of know what you're dealing with.
I went directly through the link.
So when you click on that link in the presentation, you get to our GIS e-maps. On our homepage, on the tutorial on the right-hand side at the top, you'll see e-maps. This is where it's going to take you. Basically, this can take you directly to an active layer depending on what you're looking for, air quality, water quality, We're specifically going to look for Superfund sites. That's what we want to see first. So we're going to go all the way down and click on that link. So now it's going to load our interactive GIS map. And this is linked to a lot of other databases, through the counties,
they
through
got
the
good internet
cities,
here.
through like the national stuff. Obviously, things can change, just keep checking back the normal disclaimers you see on things. We cannot ensure that the information is 100% accurate.
So this is your site, your state overview.
Yeah.
So this shows you all the little red dots are various Superfund sites, either state or federal, in Arizona.
Okay.
So up here in this little box, we're going to type in the address. 18
Maybe, but I don't think so, but let's try it. Okay?
West.
1817 West Peoria. Now, this search is a little picky, so if you put in an address and it doesn't work, make sure you've spelled it right, or you've got the right spacing, or that kind of thing. So just keep trying until you get your actual address up there. And as you can see, it's loading. So we'll see, and if it's not, we'll show you how you can tell like how close one is. Because if you're in a Superfund site, you have to disclose. And I always say if you're close to one, it's best to always say it as well. Because if they talk to neighbors or they talk to folks, it's always good to have that information up.
Is that Phoenix, Glendale? What is that?
I would say within like half a mile.
Phoenix 85021.
I mean, more than a mile is fine. But like, since we don't know exactly where the groundwater is, if you're like,
The internet connection is, so it is slow. If you have a slow internet connection, it does take a while, just an FYI. Because, I mean, it's loading a lot of data. Did I spell it right? Oh,
here we go.
There we go. There we
Yay!
go.
Okay.
There we go.
So this is what it looks like. So it shows you the address, shows you the location. Does that look about right? You can't really see it.
It's where this green dot is.
Augustana Avenue, Peoria. Okay, so you'll see it looks yellow and white. It doesn't have any weird colors and any weird shading. So that, first off, that tells you it's not in a Superfund site because you don't have a shading underneath it. If you zoom out, you can see, well, how is there one close by? No. I mean, you've got 3 or 4 miles. There's no Superfund site. Now, there could be other aspects. So what's cool about this website is you can go up to our layers, which is, I think, the scoot
other
over
one.
to like the pancakes. There you go.
Yeah.
You can click on a layer, and you can pick on so many other things to look for. If you want to know if there is like schools, you can click on there for schools. If you want to know if there's a large quantity generator, hazardous waste, you can click
There's
on
your
that.
schools.
There's your schools. If you scroll down, if you want to know about like hazardous waste or landfills, you can scroll down there for that.
Where is landfill?
Way at the bottom. If you're in an air quality zone, you
Here's
can
landfills.
click on that to see if you're in an air quality zone. Landfills looks like there's no landfills in the earth. So this layers.
Here's where you're coming up on all your wharf sites.
Yeah. So for you, it's further south. But all these layers, you can click around. I mean, I invite you to kind of click around and poke around. It's an amazing resource for you, as well as that My Community dashboard also.
And the other thing you can do is see you've got this site right here. Wait, wrong.
Oh,
You
yeah.
can click on it, and it will give you the information about it, and then you can click on more info, and it will give you more info.
So why don't you go ahead and click on that one, and then we do have a question. Okay,
So
question.
there you go.
Microphone. I know.
Are any of the Superfunds posing a health risk to people who live in the area, or is it all groundwater? And if so, does that map show which ones?
Okay, so the only ones that have any kind of like maybe possible health exposure is actually a federal site over on the East Valley. You probably all know this one, the Motorola 52nd Street site. That has some shallow groundwater, and we do have some homes with active vapor intrusion mechanisms, and
I highlighted that right
yeah,
here.
and again, they don't pay for it, and they do testing and everything. But for the state sites, like we mentioned, because we're dealing with the groundwater issue, as long as they're drinking from a municipal water source, there is not. It's just more of, we need to clean up the water for the future, and we want to make sure that when the cities need the water, it's available for them. But most of those are historical, and then the soil has either been cleaned and gone, or it's so far down there is no exposure. But again, if you want to just verify, you can give us a call and we can tell you that. It's on our website too, but the only one that I know of is that Motorola one that we have the active vapor intrusion system. So does that answer your question? Okay. Yeah, it's really just more of a, hey, you have a right to know what's going on, and that this private wells is really where our concern is. If you ever have a property that does have a private well, please contact us. We will test that water. We will test it to make, especially
We
if you're
have
in the
this
Superfund
statement
site.
on pretty much all
Yeah.
the websites right here. If
Yeah.
you have a private well, live in an area near the boundaries, and if not had tested, please contact us.
Okay, so, good, okay.
Am I remembering this correctly, of having read or heard, that part of the cleanup of that plume that's below I-10 is to pump the water over to using irrigation in the agriculture over by 303 in the west?
So that is an end source of some of the water, but the water is usually treated before that happens because irrigation has its own standards of what they will accept in their canals and everything. So it's treated, but to a different standard than, say, drinking water would be. And these chemicals that we're dealing with, to answer the other question about they volatilize. They want to be in the air. They're not going to what's called bioaccumulate in cells or in tissue. So like the plants and the vegetables and all that kind of stuff, it's not, they don't want to live there. They would rather expand and go in the air and that kind of aspect.
So then some of those volatile chemicals are going into the air and are in the wind, especially when the dust blows, right? Or not?
So when the dust blows, that would be surface, but for the irrigation aspect, I honestly I would have to look at what some of the recent sampling was for those. But it also kind of like she mentioned, even though it was kind of a joke, it's also kind of true that dilution and spreading it out and kind of mixing it with it also helps with the levels and aspect too. And it has to be really concentrated to have any like air, exposure aspect. And also they always look at time frame. It's, how long for how many hours for 30 years, 8 hours a day, every single day kind of aspect is what they look at for risk also, if that answers your question. But I'm happy to follow up with you too.
Sure.
Okay,
Great, thank
okay,
you.
cool. So real quick, so if you found a Superfund site and that box showed up to find out about that site to give to your buyer or your seller, you click on that link, takes you right to our webpage. This is anything and everything you would want to know. We do not write letters. We don't make formal written statements. You can print anything you want from our website. That's your written documentation on what's going on, the levels, the maps, that kind of aspect.
And there's all kinds of links down here that you can get even more information. This is a general overview. You can get a pretty detailed site history on each site. You can get more information about, when different phases happened and what the documents said. They're all on this website. Yeah. So you can get all that information right off of the website.
Yes, ma'am.
On the previous slide, it appeared that there were some school icons that might be located in these Superfund sites.
Uh-huh.
Are there any concerns about,
Yes.
And any liability about building schools on these sites?
No, because of the exposure pathway, as long as the school is on a municipal water system, because we're not dealing with soil contamination, and any soil left on site would have a deed restriction that would restrict it from building a school, building a house.
So they do
aspect.
consider children and the elderly more susceptible.
Yeah.
So the standards for like building a school versus building, a McDonald's are going to be different. So
Much
they
lower,
will
more
take
conservative.
that into consideration if you're putting a school. They wouldn't let you put a school on a site that couldn't be remediated to the level safe for children.
Correct.
So the Superfund site off 19th Avenue near the landfill, across the street, there's a huge concrete company. So my question is, a lot of these concrete companies and quarries, is their water being regulated too with what they're mixing and with a lot of these building materials?
So that would be because they do a discharge, most likely. That would be through our water quality group and our NIFTY's permits, as well as I know they're monitored pretty heavily through our air quality department as well. So those phone numbers that we gave you, that's where you would get that information. Or if you want to follow up with me afterwards, I can get that contact and then give it to you also. But that's, again, not what we focus on, but I do know they are part of the groups that ADEQ does regulate. Okay, and then on that irrigation question, there have been numerous health assessments and health risks done on that irrigation water, and because of, like I mentioned, with the levels and the dilution, there hasn't been health risk assessed, but I can get you more information on that and actually where to find it on our website as well, so you can read it for yourself. Yes, ma'am.
So these Superfund sites, are these really only an issue for people who plan to dig a well?
Pretty much.
And is this information, is there a link to this in the buyer advisory?
That's a question for your broker who makes that for you. Most realtor groups that we talk to, it is in there. I would just verify that the links and the phone numbers and the resources in your buyer advisory is correct and it matches what you've got here. But that's up to whoever makes that for you. For your handouts and stuff. But yeah, it's pretty much, if you don't plan on drilling your own well or having your own well, it's just more of letting you know what's going on, part of that SARA. Title III, it's like, hey, this is happening, this is going on, and we know what's going on, we're on top of it, and the bottom line is to protect you from any future contamination and to make sure we've got the water ready when we need it, which may be sooner than later.
And I do want to point out, too, that these do change over time. They get smaller, hopefully, over time as they clean them up.
Yeah.
So, if you sell a property and then 10 years later you're going to resell it, do check the maps because they do change. We've got like one in Tucson where it's radically different than it used to be.
Yeah, because we have active cleanup and treatment going on at a lot of sites right now. So, okay, so I think let's show real quick an address where you would see it, boom, like this is definitely in a Superfund site. So our building where I work, and I do go into the office 3 days a week, and I've been going to the office 8 hours a day for 25 years, is it a Superfund site? So, and I'm healthy. So.
Expo Washington.
So I'm going to show you what it looks like if you had a property in a Superfund site, what that would look like immediately, so you don't have to zoom out or search around or anything. So it's going to take a while. But see that big brown one? That's the West Van Buren site, which is probably where that irrigation question came from. And our building is right there. And then you'll see how that looks different than the gentleman's address that he gave us when we pulled that up. So we just have to let it load. Any other questions while we're waiting for it to load? But just to kind of go over how groundwater moves, see how some of these sites are super long and they're going down? They're going how groundwater flows. So that's why, as she said, they can change over time. One, they're being cleaned up, or one, the groundwater is flowing. Some of these sites will degrade themselves over time, and that's where some of these sites we're just watching that because the amount of money and time to try to clean it up it's not as effective, and that's part of what we look at. What's the best method to clean it up? Sometimes the most expensive method isn't the best, and sometimes the cheapest isn't the best. We look at all the parameters, but that's why they have different shapes too. Is it still loading? Yay! Oh, see? See how it's brown? That's how you know.
Yeah, and then you pull out and you can see, oh, it's right in the middle.
Yeah, so now, say like this was yours. Say like you're going to sell my building, So now click on the actual site itself.
Oh, this one?
Yeah, so now that's the West Van Buren site. And now I want to know about that site. What's going on? So you click on that, it takes you right to our webpage. Boom, it's right there.
Yeah.
And then contact information if you want to know a little bit more about it. So that's how you kind of navigate the Superfund Wharf aspect. On the first half of the presentation, the My Community page and the dashboard, there's some links on there. If you need any help navigating that, feel free to give me a call as well.
What's the score? 50. What is that relevant to?
What do you mean?
Score, right there.
Oh, it's just they look at a variety of parameters and risks and pathways, and out of, say, 100, they'll score a site. It really doesn't, it doesn't say if a site's going to get listed or not, but it may determine maybe like this has a higher health risk, so we need to take an early response action, or we don't have any receptors, which is somebody who may be exposed to the water, so the score may be lower, so we may just monitor that or do more investigation before we actually clean up. So it determines a little bit on how we look at the sites, but we treat all the sites the same because they're all a risk to the water, and we want to clean all of it up. So. I think it's
120.
out of 120.
It's out of 120.
Yeah, but it's
Yeah.
really not a big, to be honest, it's not a big. Oh, yeah,
Oh,
totally.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's just they base it on how you're exposed, where the contaminant is, what contaminant it is.
Yeah.
If people live nearby, if people don't. If there's
It's
wells
honestly,
nearby.
it's honestly like checking a box, but we treat them all the same. But if there is a actual exposure or pathway, we tackle those first. Like in the rural areas, those private wells, we tackle that first.
Right.
Okay. Question, and then I think we're at time, right? Okay.
Where do we click to put in an address to search?
Oh,
Oh,
yeah, let's
yeah.
go.
It's
back.
right at the top. There's this little box. You see the little box?
Okay, then which
Yeah.
do we click to get to that EMAP?
Okay,
So as soon
go-
as you go to the,
Go to the homepage.
okay.
Okay, I got there, yeah.
Yeah, and
Okay.
it should be on the tutorial too, but.
Yes.
Okay, so see that EMAPs on the right-hand side?
Yep.
When you go to ADEQ's homepage, then you'll see that you click to that EMAPs, and then you get this.
So then, but which one of, there are a whole bunch of maps to
Correct.
choose from, right?
So
Yeah,
if
you can choose any one of these, honestly, to get to the map, and
Right.
then you select layers.
Right, but
So-
to get to Superfund, you go to Waste Programs, go back.
Well, I was going to show her the layers.
Okay,
So
well, but
here
she-
is,
She wants to know how to get to the map.
oh,
Yeah.
well,
So you go to Waste Programs, and Superfund is what you want active right when you click on it. That's where you click, right there. Superfund, WARF,
Awesome.
DOD.
Thank you.
Then you go to the layers and do all the other stuff.
yeah, and you can click on, like, if you were interested in storage tanks, you click on storage tanks, view map. And it'll automatically populate those in. And then once you get to the maps, let's say but I want to look for something else, then you click on this layers, and anything you check here, you can see. It even does zip codes for you in
Yeah.
schools. I mean, the school one is useful even if you're not, really looking for a waste site, right? Because you could say, oh, it's really close to the school,
Question?
Just really quick, how often are those updated? Like, are they taking samples like yearly, monthly?
Every site is different depending on where it is in the process. If we're still in the investigation process, then we're sampling a little bit more regularly. For when the cleanup phase, depends on how the cleanup is done. So every site's, I hate to say that, but every site's a little different. But every single site on there has some kind of active monitoring going on, whether it's quarterly, yearly, bi-yearly, every other year. So it kind of just depends on what site you want, and then we can tell you how active it's done. But if they're on the WARF list, they are actively being monitored and sampled.
Thank you.